Chav Chesam and Beis, and in the regular Gemara, I'm going to count from the bottom: 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 lines from the bottom. Then the Rabbi Kiva v'Omar. The first word on the line should be Rabbi Shmuel alachas kama v'kama. Right. So the story is about. Remember this Moed Kattan, for those who remember, is about Avelis at the end, and it ends off with a long story about the death of the sons of Rabbi Shmuel. So 4 of his contemporaries came in: Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Rabbi Elazar Azar, and Rabbi Akiva. And each of them tried to give divrei tanchumim for the death to Rabbi Shmuel on the death of his 2 sons. Looks like it's 2 sons here. It's surely multiple. And so each of them gave, if we cry for this, then surely we should cry for this, and so forth and so on. So Rabbi Akiva comes along and gives a very long drash to say this piece of Gemara is found also in Masechet Megillah. So when we learn Megillah, you'll no doubt remember it from there. Okay, the Gemara has a whole long discussion at the beginning about the relationship of Torah Sheba'al Peh and Torah Shebachsav, and it brings this as an example of a pasuk you could never really know the real pshat without knowing what the Torah Sheba'al Peh tells us. Okay, so we had done the other. The Tanchumim from Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Yossi Haglili, and Rabbi Elazar Azar that we gave over to Rabbi Shmuel, and we have the last one which we left because it's a little bit more extensive because of the drash. We're going to do that tonight. Okay, and then Rabbi Akiva v'Omar. Everybody here see it? So he quotes this pasuk from Zechariah Yud Bet. Bayomu Yigadol Hamisbeh B'Shleim K'Misbeh Hadad Rimo Mebekat Megiddo. So he says, the Navi says, on that day there'll be such a terrible destruction. It'll be like they'll be crying in Yerushalayim like the Hesped about Hadad Rimon in the valley of Megiddo. Okay, which we don't know who Hadad Rimon is. We have no idea who Hadad Rimon was in the valley of Megiddo. Okay.
What's beyond which day?
So the Navi is talking about. I think the Navi is talking actually about Churban Abayis. Okay. So, from Rabbi Yosef, Amalei Tergumuha the High Croft, not for the Targum. I'm sorry, it's actually the Gemara Megillah is not about Torah Shebachsav and Torah Sheba'al. It's about the role of the Targum.
Can you use Aramaic?
Targum Yonasan ben Aziel, who we don't have on the Ksuvim. Actually, we have a Targum that may be called Yonasan ben Aziel, but it's really not on the Ksuvim. Or it's really not the Targum Yonasan ben Aziel, and he wanted to do this, and he could only get as far as Nevi'im. But at any rate, it gives one example of how far-fetched it could be. What is it? If without the Targum of this pasuk, we would know what it says, which is Be'idnei hahu yaske mispei the bishlayim. It's talking about the time of the of the crying of the Hesped in Yerushalayim, the crying Yerushalayim like Kemispeido the Achav ben Amri, the Kato Yossi Hadad Rimon ben Tavrimon. It'll be the crying will be as bad as the destruction when Hadad Rimon killed Achav, the famous Achav, the wicked Achav, and Ukemisbei the Yeshaya ben Amon, the Kato Yehu Paro Chagira b'Mekas Megiddo, and it'll be as bad as the Hesped about Yoshiyahu. This is the Yoshiyahu that we read about in the Kinos, right? The famous Yoshiyahu who was defeated in Megiddo, and this we know from a number of sources, not just the Tanakh, against Paro, who was on his way up to fight Babylonia. Right? This is 597 or something. Right?
Why would it be a Hesped for Achav?
So that's actually that's actually what the drash is all about. He's like a real bad guy, correct?
Right.
I mean, but the answer is Achav actually also expands the borders of Eretz Yisrael. Of all the terrible things he did, this is, by the way, for those of us who feel about how important expanding borders are, Achav expands the borders. He may have done it in ways that were not necessarily religiously. He may not have been a religiously sanctioned person, but the reality was he fought for Eretz Yisrael. Okay, and therefore, when he died, it was a time where there were Hespedim. Believe it or not. Okay.
And I understand his armies never lost because there was great unity in the army.
Correct. In other words, for all that that's if you want to really draw the analogy about people who are not committed to Torah values and the value of developing Eretz Yisrael, Achav becomes one of the paradigms for it. Because you see, his death was mourned.
He was killed by an Egyptian too. I mean,
but he's killed by Hadad Rimon ben
killed by Hadad Rimon?
Correct. There are two twists. In other words, the Targum says there is no specific person known as Hadad Rimon who dies in the valley of Megiddo.
Right.
There are two Espedim that the Navi is referring to, which were terrible tragedies. One was the loss of Achab ben Omri, who was killed by some guy Hadad Rimon ben Tavrimon, and there was also a Hesped for Yeshaya ben Amon, the famous Yoshio ben Amon, who was killed by Paro in Bikat Megiddo. Okay, and now here comes the drash. Uma v'lo dvarim kal v'chomer. This is Rabbi Akiva trying to give tanchumim to Rabbi Shmuel. Uma Achav melech Yisrael shloso davar echad tov. The Achav only did one good thing in his life. The Chsiv v'melech hoyam ma'amar B'merkava nochach aram. So what does Achav really do that's good? So he stands. In other words, he didn't, when he was wounded, he remained standing in his chariot. So people would maintain hope fighting against Aram. The same story comes up, by the way, in certain other kings. I think Yoshio as well in some of the Medrashim. So he remained standing. That was his great thing that he did. And you see, people gave him this tremendous necessity. There are other things as well, but in terms of the Gemara is trying to kind of emphasize one moment of when he dies, he went out with a flash. People could say he went out as a hero. So Kach Banav Rabbi Shmuel Alachas Kam V'Kama. Surely we should cry for the loss of the sons of Rabbi Shmuel. Surely. So that's the drash that Rabbi Akiva mentions to try to bring Tanchum. It doesn't really bring Tanchum, it really formalizes the mourning. In other words, how much more so we should be here to try to recognize the loss that you have and be part of the recognition of the loss for all of Klal Yisrael by the loss of your sons. So this is what Rabbi Akiva says to Rabbi Shmuel. Now, having talked about that, the Gemara now throws in a couple of other drushes here about people who die, as I guess in Nisbach, in an epilogue to all these other psukim that were quoted, especially this one that talks about the loss of Yoshio, which is the end of the time of the Beis Hamikdash. So Gemara says, let me just see where I lost the place for a moment. Amalei Rabbi Rava, or I skipped the Rava. Amalei Rava l'Rabba bar bar Mari. Ksiv be'bit Tzidkiyahu. It says with King Tzidkiyahu, b'shalom tamus, you will die. That the prophet says to him, you will die peacefully. And we know that's not true. Right? That they first for Tzidkiyahu, they captured him and his sons. They killed his sons in front of him, and then they blinded him. So the last thing he would remember is the loss of his sons. That was the image that would be seared into his memory. So surely he doesn't die in peace. So what could the Navi be referring to? Once again, this really has nothing to do with anything here. But you see, it's going to come back to Yoshio in a couple of minutes. Amalei Hacham Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, what was the peace he had? Shemesh Nebuchadnezzar b'yamav. Okay, that Nebuchadnezzar died while he was still alive. So while he didn't die peacefully, he died in captivity, but his tormentor or his captor still died before him. So the ultimate nechama is I outlived those who killed me. Right, correct. Okay. Well, the truth is, some of the Holocaust survivors talk about this, the fact that they outlived Hitler, right? They outlived the Third Reich and so forth. I mean, it doesn't solve all the problems, of course, but at least it's the Chatzi Nechama. So this is about Tzidkiyahu. Now, the same Rava says to Rabbi Amar, Ksiv baby should be a Yoshiyahu. Same thing comes up with Yoshio, the same Yoshio we just talked about, who Zechariah says it'll be as bad as the death of this guy. It doesn't mean this guy, it means one that has spayed him about the death of Yoshio. He says, Hashem says, Okay, so in other words, once again, the prophet says that I will bring you to peace. You'll die in peace. You'll be brought to burial b'shalom. And we know it's not true. That the archers shot him up. And the Gemara says here, and in another place as well, V'yom Rabbi Yehuda, what do you mean the archer shot him? Obviously, we know he got killed by an arrow. So Rabbi Yehuda, Rav Shasu Kekvara, they made him like a sieve. In other words, once they got him, they really got him. They inflicted all kinds of arrows upon him once they realized the targets, one on top of the other. So therefore, what is the great Nechama? What is the great prophecy? You'll die b'shalom, be buried peacefully. This does not look like a peaceful death. So Amalei Hacham Rabbi Yochanan says, what what was the peace that he had? Shlocharav Beis HaMikdash biyama. Okay, it's very small consolation. Okay, he didn't get to see the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. He didn't. Right? In fact, people had pinned their hopes that he would turn around the situation. Unfortunately, he made the tactical error, and Yeshayahu told him not to go. He said, "Don't go fight Paro." Paro and Yoshio said, "I can't let him go through." Paro was on the way up. Paro, there were two superpowers. Well, actually, there was one superpower at this point. Egypt was the U.S. of A. I don't even know if that's a superpower anymore. The superpower of that time. Babylonia was the upstart. Right, and Babylonia was flexing its muscles. Paro said, "I'm going to kind of put them down," and so he sends his army up the coast. Yoshio says, "I'm not going to let them come through, because anytime an army goes through your land, it's a pretty miserable kind of thing, right? They leave behind all kinds of destruction, even if they don't want to destroy you. It's called Cherev Shel Shalom." The prophet said, "Don't go, don't bother. It's not your battle. Let them go. You won't be successful." He went, and it was a terrible miscalculation, and he died in battle in Megiddo. Okay, you can see Megiddo today. Megiddo is a real place. You won't see the battle scars, but you see the place. And he died, and of course Paro just continues. Paro continues up till Carchemish. This is near 603, and 603 before the Common Era. And in Carchemish there's this massive battle between Egypt and Babylonia, in which Egypt is defeated. And Babylonia becomes a superpower, setting in motion the ultimate destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. So no one knows, well, actually the prophet said what would have happened, but no one really knows what would have happened if Yoshio had not gone to battle, right? Because then he would have lived, and as a strong a monarch who was committed to Torah values, maybe history would have changed. And the other thing, by the way, the historians have said, and I think I've said this somewhere along the line, is the suggestion is because Paro was somewhat weakened in fighting the Israelites in Megiddo, Paro killed Yoshio. Paro defeated the Israelites in the battle in Megiddo. But his army continues, but they've been somewhat nipped. So when he comes to Carchemish, he's coming with wounded baggage, or baggage that's been somewhat reduced. Sure. That weakens him in the ultimate battle at Carchemish against Babylonia, and he is defeated therefore against Babylonia. If Yoshio had not stopped, had not engaged him, Paro would have continued. Paro's army would have been stronger. Paro could have been defeated, Bavel, and the story, Jewish history, would have been a lot different, because as long as Paro was in power, everything seemed to work. Right? So at any rate, so the Nechama for Yoshio was that he would not see Churban Abayis, and in fact he did not see Churban Abayis. For us it's sad, because he may have stopped Churban Abayis. But assuming that things were put in motion, he did not live through that. There are European Jewry lives up and through the destruction of Churban Europa, the Holocaust. And there are Gedolim you read about before the war who were vibrant, and they didn't all die in the Holocaust. Some died before the Holocaust, and you realize what I guess bracha it could have been for them, that they didn't go through the hell of Europe. Right? They didn't. No one knew what was happening. People thought actually when Hitler came to power, the initial feeling he was going to be good for the Jews. How wrong they were. But these people who died early simply from old age, they were spared the whole kind of nightmare that would take place in Europe. So it's the same thing. So he died peacefully without having to go through Churban Beis HaMikdash. He didn't die peacefully, but he was spared seeing this terrible destruction. Okay. So these last statements are said by Rabbi Yochanan in response. There were two stories. One was about after the Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Kiva story. There's about Tzidkiyahu, which leads back to Yoshiyahu, which is the conclusion of the Yoshio piece we started with, which were the answers that were given when Rabbi asked Rav Mori in both cases, who gives the response, why was this Shalom, why was this Nechama? Rabbi Yochanan. So now that brings us to another statement of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan. We're on topic. We're on topic about Nichma Velim here. Rabbi Yochanan, the people who come to console can't say anything until the oval opens up. Shnemar, Acharei Kain Patach or Pasach or Eov Espio. After his friends come to Eov and kind of try to say things to him, then I guess no. I'm sorry. After all the terrible things happen, Eov mourned or curses his fate, and then v'hada v'yana Eliphaz atimani. Only then does Eliphaz speak up. Subsequent to that, you don't find Eliphaz speaking to Eov before Eov is actually complains about it. Okay? So therefore, you have to. So therefore, the analogy is therefore the Oval needs to say something first.
This is an important halacha, no?
It's very important.
I would say.
Very important halacha.
I mean,
I told you a story. I went to my friend many years ago. It's a story that I don't know, 1970s. He was a librarian. He was a very quiet guy. I went to visit him in Brooklyn. He was sitting shiva. He said nothing, and I could say nothing because I was a buff. I had to follow this thing.
Yeah.
If I was older, I probably would have gotten overcome my concern about I would say concern about halacha, but I would have actually piped in something. But we sat there for a very long time, and that was pretty much it.
Maybe the Avel just needs to see something.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And something, no one was there. He really was he was a librarian. He was a very scholarly guy. But he was a very quiet, timid person, and but he eventually went to business. Okay, he couldn't make a living being a librarian.
Not easy.
Okay. All right. Am Rabbi Avo. Minay lava shemesa barosh. How do you know that the Avel sits at the center, sits at the head? Shnemar evchar darkem v'eshev rosh v'eshkon kamelach bigdod kasher avelim yinachem. Okay, so the pasuk says, a pasuk from Eov, that I will choose their way. I'll sit at the head, and I will sit or dwell like a king with his battalion, when like avelim are comforted. Now, that's the pasuk. There's one problem with the pasuk. The pasuk is not really the Avelim are comforting. It's more that the Avelim comfort. So it doesn't look very like the Avel is at the middle, at the center, when people are comforting him. It looks like he's comforting others. So the Gemara says, Yinachem achrine, mash means he will comfort others. So Rav Nachman, yes, like the old Kriyan Ksiv here. It's not Kriyan Ksiv, but how you read it. Yinachem Ksiv, not Yinachem, Yinachem. In other words, the Avel will sit in the middle, V'eshev Rosh, when the Avel will be Yinachem. That's the drash here. It's not the simple pshat pasuk. Okay. Mar Zutra Amar Mehacha Vesar Marzach Sruchim Masar Marzach Sruchim. I don't know what this pasuk means.
The mourner becomes prince of the exalted ones.
Okay, the mourner becomes the prince of the exalted ones. What's before that? What's the actual meaning of the pasuk?
Excessive mourning will approach.
What? The white mourning?
Marzach is mourning.
Right.
Sar Sruchim will I guess turn away to reproach. So it really has nothing. It's a very different kind of pasuk from Amos. But the drash is the Marzeh becomes the Sar, not Samach Reish to turn aside or turn towards, but Sin Reish from Sar, from an officer, a head of the what they call Sruchim, the
excessive ones.
Excessive ones. Okay, so
kind of excessive.
It's understood as referring to the nobility and aristocracy who come to console a mourner.
Right.
Even they must accord him honor and seat him at the head.
Right. And in fact, that's pretty much what we do. We don't sit like at the head of a table, but when you come, you ever come to a shiva, the mourner is sitting, people sitting around him.
Of course.
It's understood. That's what it is.
Because it's his house.
Correct. But I'm saying, but generally also because you're coming to pay a shiva call and you want to make sure the mourner sees you as well, and you're coming to have the mourner speak about the deceased and to give him comfort, so it makes sense that all the people are focused on him.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay? But in other words, it's not just good common sense. The Gemara seems to say there's at least some kind of biblical remez for it. Okay. Now, having said about a mourner, so we kind of go from topic to topic. Amar Rav Chama Bar Chanina, Minayin l'chasen shemeisav rosh. How you know the chasen sits in the center, right? That once again something you can readily understand. You go to a chasen's dish, chasen's in the middle, right? Shnei Amar kechasan yechahen pe'er. Like this is b'cha tedeh keleha. This is taken from Yeshaya. That like a chasan, he will be full of pe'er, I guess is radiant. Ma kohen barosh, av chasen barosh. The same way that the kohen sits is given the accorded honor at the head, so to the chasen. How you know the kohen? The Kohen Gufa Minolin. How do you know that the Kohen is put at the head? He's given that kind of honor. The Tanya, Rabbi Shmuel. Once again, if you've seen this in different ways. B'Kidashto. This is in Vayikra Chaf Aleph. Talking about the Kohen. L'chol davar shebekedusha. That you sanctify him for everything that is sanctified, which means Leftoach Rishon. He opens first, like Levarach Rishon. He benches first. Litomar Yaf Rishon. He gets the first piece. The Kohen gets first. By the way, the Levi does not necessarily get second. Leviim do not really get the same honor. We're not the second-rate fiddles to Kohanim. It's very nice that people do that. We do for the Aliyahs, but as you know, when the Kohen is not there to get the first Aliyah, you do not call the Levi, correct? And if there is no Levi to wash the Kohen's hands, guess what? Kohen will wash himself, or someone else will wash him. But if there's no Kohen, there's no substitute for a Kohen. So, by the way, it's a machlokas for the first aliyah. What if there is a real Talmud Chacham present? Right? What if you had the Gadol Hadar? I don't know. Would you give the Kohen, or would you give that person? I don't know. Rav Shechta's coming. Have to let's see what the shul does. Okay, but no. But would you give the Kohen because there's Kavod Torah? Correct. This is Kavod Kohen. But let's say you have a Kohen who's a regular Kohen, and you have a greater level of Kavod, which is Kavod Torah. So actually, according to many opinions, the Kavod Torah actually would trump it. But it's got to be really
dangerous precedent.
It's actually not a dangerous precedent. It's only a dangerous precedent if you decide a person is a first-rate scholar when they're only a second-rate scholar. It's got to be not just first-rate scholar, a real scholar.
But didn't we learn in the Gila Daka that it said the Kohen had to go for? I'm trying to remember what we learned.
I'm saying,
if the Kohen is
Personal chapter is like
Kohen Amar.
Accounting for their long life. And one said, I always let the Kohen bench first.
Good, yeah, remember? We learned that.
You ever see that happen when they gave it to
No.
I don't think it happens.
I mean, it would be almost.
I think the great Gadol Hador would say, let the Kohen go.
I don't know.
It's easy if the Gadol Hador is a Kohen.
And that helped a lot. But
It's easy. You don't have any issues.
Gadol Hador would say, listen, let the Kohen go.
So I believe I heard stories about Rav Soloveitchik that he would do this. Rav Soloveitchik used to come to YU on Tuesdays or Thursdays to give shir. He lived in Boston. Would come. He wouldn't stay for Shabbos. No, he would normally come Tuesday morning on the commuter flight from Boston, and would land and he would go to shir. And I think he actually would miss Minyan to get there. Okay, I believe. So if it was like a Rosh Chodesh, which was a Tuesday. So he would. I never saw this, but I read about this. He would say to people, okay, like, who hasn't heard Laney yet? Like, don't be shy. You know, it's 3:00 in the afternoon. Who hasn't heard Laney yet? And he would put together a minyan. I believe that he would do this. That they would give him the aliyah first. He was a Levi. They say he's a Levi. But even though he was a Kohen, right, he would take the first aliyah. Okay? It was not about modesty or not modesty. It's a halacha. Okay?
The next thing is the Kohen is seated at the head of the table. If you have a Kohen for dinner.
Yeah. Do you put him at the head of the table? Every place we sit is the head of the table. The head of the table doesn't really have the significance anymore. Okay, but it means you know, people look at kibudim in different ways today, right? So one way we mechabed benching.
I was going to say, it's certainly.
They're using the word seva here, right? Like it was like
seva.
Kattan shemesiv barash.
Mesa means okay, he reclines.
Right. So in other words, they're talking about those things that they used to have, like Persians used to have, right? The futons, whatever it was.
Right. Correct. That's right. But that's how they sat.
Yeah, like on Pesach.
But that's how they normally sat. That's how they normally sat and ate. They sat like straight up when they were learning. When they ate, that's the way. For us, it sounds like it's like uncouth. It sounds like it's disrespectful. That was the normal custom. I don't know. You which country did they eat on the floor? Japanese.
Yeah.
When I say a person eats on the floor, right? My mother never let us eat on the floor, right?
Actually, today I once went to someone from Persia that offered, went to his place, a kosher place, and we sat on. Like cushions on the floor.
Yeah.
Cushions on the floor.
So I'm saying, every culture and every time and every location has their own way to give kavod. So I'm saying, for us to sit at the head of the table, I don't know. I mean, I mean, maybe if the guy sits at on the way out near the door, maybe that's not the right thing for a Kohen. But I don't know. You need to kind of put him at the head table. You sit at the head table.
Balabus sits at the head.
Right? I don't know.
Balabus usually. Right.
I've been to houses where they put the dog at the head of the table. Head comes up and they sit here.
Balabus, sure. Right?
Yes, the balabus for sure. Okay.
Go to your kid's house.
All right. Now, so this is all about these kind of rolling and rolling. Went from Avel to Chassan, and now we're in the bottom of the page. Amram Chanina. Kasha. This comes back to the time of death. Kasha Yitzias Neshama Kaguf. Kitzipori b'fi aveshet. Kitzipori, Rashi. Kitzipori is like
Kitzipori is a place, no?
No, Kitzipori is a place, but in this case, Kitzipori are thick ropes.
Rigging.
Okay, the thick riggings b'fi aveshet that come through where I guess the hole is, right?
I guess in a boat or something.
Right.
Maybe a small.
So these are very thick ropes. They're not the kind of ropes.
Very small holes, probably.
Right. So those you're pulling it through. So you're actually pulling. There's it's just more difficult to kind of move it along, and it's a tight fit. Right. And the reason that they are so thick, and the reason the hole is so tight, is to make sure they don't move around. So this is the way the neshama goes out. It's like a separation. This is, by the way, what we believe. It's very hard for the neshama to leave the body. The neshama is in us, and now the time has come for passing away, and the neshama leaves. However it means that they've been integrally together, and it's hard for the neshama actually to leave. And Rabbi Yochanan says, "Ke patiri b'fi veshet." Patiri are actually thick, like I guess steel cables. I think they're even thicker cables. So this is even more difficult, and therefore this just brings us back on to once again the end of the Masechta. And we'll come back to this, and we got another couple of statements here to come. Yes.
The word veshet
Veshet is the esophagus.
Yeah.
Right. And Tzipori is the city. Yes, I don't know.
No. I'm saying because it's.
So the answer is think of this as a pipe.
Yeah.
Right?
I understand.
And you're pulling, and only instead of the esophagus having food go down.
It's a rope.
Right.
Yeah.
By the way, it's a very apt analogy. If it really.
Maybe your neshama is going up.
Which veshet is which one? Which is the.
I'm not sure.
One is a pancreas, and one's
One is the windpipe.
Windpipe. The windpipe.
Windpipe. Okay.
I'm
So.
not sure which one.
one is.
Okay.
I think it's an esophagus.
Okay. So.
It's an esophagus.
It's esophagus.
Only because I know somebody in Israel who said they had cancer, sadly, of the thing, and I seem to remember veshet was the
Okay.
thing. So.
Well, if it's the esophagus, it makes a whole lot of sense in the analogy, the way you swallow food.
Right.
I mean, with peristalsis, you can feel it goes down, right? It's a very tight fit. It really isn't a tight fit, okay, but I'm saying, but the way the body looks at when it goes down.
Rabbi, the Omer Peteri, isn't that the word death?
Patiri? Yeah, correct. So, niftar, correct. Niftar means to die, correct.
Right.
In this case, it does not mean that altogether. Rashi says, if you look at Rashi kind of gives you an interpretation. Rashi's kitzipori b'fi aveshet is chevel sheish lo kesher. So actually, Rashi says it's not just the rope has a knot in it. That's what's difficult. So you're pulling the knot through the hole. That's this is probably a better translation. Yote bekoshi min ha-Torah, and it goes through the hole with difficulty. And the Petiri, says Rashi, shekoshim shnei sfiras biachad. This is very thick cable, where that they would tie two boats together. So whatever it is, it's something. It's got some kind of bumble on it or some kind of knot on it, and it's very tight to get it through. And the same way you struggle, right? Okay, so let's say you're going to struggle as well. The neshama struggles to separate. Rav Levi bar Chaisa. Haniftar manameis lo yomar lo lech l'shalom ela lech b'shalom. And haniftar manachai lo yomar lo lech b'shalom ela lech l'shalom. So there's a difference here. It sounds like minor. The Gemara is going to prove to you the difference. When you leave the deceased, you say lech b'shalom, and when you leave the person alive, you say lech l'shalom.
Absolutely.
I would be more careful about the second one, right?
Yes,
Okay.
for sure.
Why? So, as it says to, this is to Avraham, the bris ben Amsar, Vatot tavo elav asecha bishalom. You return to your father's bishalom. So once again, the case obviously was alive, but it means this was like a premonition of bishalom means in death.
Yeah.
Like rest in peace.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And Anifta min achai lo yom lo lech bishalom lech lishlom sharei David amar le'Avshalom yelech olech bishalom v'halach v'nitla. Okay? So Avshalom, when David says to Avshalom lech bishalom, he died. The end of Avshalom was not very happy. He got caught in the tree with his hair, right? And they killed him. And David heard about it. They thought that would be happy. David said, Avshalom bali, Avshalom bini, right? We just had the Haftorah?
No. Was this past week? No.
No? Maybe
No,
not.
this past week. No, this past week was.
Not this past week, no. Okay, Yisro Shama LaMoshe Lech Lishalom, when Yisro goes and comes to visit Moshe, and this is in. Is this in Shmos or later in Sefer Bamidbar? Shmos, it's not Shmos Dalet.
That's
what it says here. It says Shmos Dalet.
I don't know what it says in the side. It's not Shmos Dalet.
No?
Oh, well, okay. Maybe this is when Moshe is going to. Yeah, this is Yisro saying to Moshe, correct, when he goes down to Egypt.
Going down to Egypt.
Not when
exactly.
Yisro leaves. Okay, so Moshe goes to the burning bush. He goes back to Yisro and says,
Yeah.
"I have to go to Achai Sheb Mitzrayim. Vayom lo Yisro lech lishalom." So Moshe goes halach v'tzleach. Okay, so therefore you see lech lishalom is the thing to say. So if you're superstitious and concerned, be very careful to remember. Say a person lech lishalom. Okay, good. It's very easy to remember. Lech lishalom. If you can't remember, okay.
Alliteration.
Right. Lech lishalom. Okay.
Well, somebody once commented too that the lech bishalom when you're dead is because the only real shalom is when you're dead, right? So then nothing else can disturb you.
Right, correct.
In that sense, right? So that's bishalom.
Right.
And everybody else, no, it's not going to be in that
Well,
state.
we say rest in peace. We don't say rest to peace.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I say. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's bishalom. It's
Right.
when you're dead, you're at
You're
peace.
dead. It's correct. They got no place
Everybody
to go.
else, no.
There's no place to go to.
Exactly.
So all of this is, of course, extremely down type of Gemara, right? You feel bad. All these people passed away, and an Avel, and even though we had a little highlight for the Chassan, we come back about Yitzias Neshama. So the Gemara always wants to end off with a high point. To end off B'chitov, we had a space statement from Rabbi Levi, so we end up with another statement from Rabbi Levi. Kol hayotzim mibeis hakneses lebeis hamedrash, mibeis hamedrash lebeis hakneses, zocha mekabel pnei shechina. If a person goes from beis medrash to beis medrash to beis knesses to beis medrash, beis medrash to beis knesses, so you'll be zocha to see the divine presence. It means you go from davening to studying to davening, that you've got a full plate of spirituality. Shnemar, it says Yelchu Mechayel El Choyel Yira Elokim B'Tzion, or Yira Elokim B'Tzion. You go from strength to strength, the two strengths are the strength of study and the strength of davening. We know there's a strength that's talking too. It's not in this Gemara. So you'll see HaKadosh Baruch see God in Zion. And finally, I'm Rav Chia Bar Ashi, I'm Rav. Talmidei Chachamim ein la menucha afilo al mabod. This is not such a good thing. And okay, but it got thrown in here. Shneimar, it's the same pasuk. Yelchu mechayel choyel yirei elokim b'tzion. They'll go from strength to strength. In other words, whatever trouble they have in this world, they're going to have trouble, so to speak, in all of them. I'm not really quite sure what it means. It means that they'll have no menucha. People will, I guess, bother them, whatever.
No, except it says mechayel lechayel.
They don't stop learning Torah.
That's it. Mechayel is positive,
So
right?
it's positive. So it's positive. Okay, that's a good way. It's a positive thing. They're not going to sit and just be doing nothing.
Exactly.
They're going to be zochim pnei b'shchina, and they'll sit and study and learn. They're not going to rest on their. They're not going to rest on the law. So it's actually very upbeat. Hadron lach Moed Kattan. Okay. So just one before we end up, and I'll read the Hadron in a minute. Just talks about going from the shul to the beis medrash to the shul. So the beginning of last week's parsha was about Yaakov and Esav in the womb with Rivka. Excuse me. So it says, so Rashi says that when they go by a shul, Yaakov was trying to go out. When they went by a church, had to be a church, whatever it was, and Esav was trying to go out.
Right.
So I guess the question is, so how come what really happened? So how come Yaakov didn't go out when they passed by the shul? And so because the Medrash before because Esav wouldn't let him. Okay, because that's why Esav kept them in there. He didn't want to let them go down and learn. So how come Esav didn't leave when he passed the church?
Right.
So the answer is because Esav so much wanted to hold on to Yaakov not going to the shul, he wanted to stay inside, even rather than give up his ability to go daven. in his own way to his own gods. And then I forgot who asked the question. It says, well, okay, so Yaakov wants to go out to go daven and whatever it is, the Beis Medrash Shem Ve'eva, or the Beis Knesset, Beis Medrash. But we know the Malach sits and teaches the child for the 9 months all the Torah.
Right.
So if he goes out now, they're passing by the shul and Yaakov is trying to go out, he's going to miss all that learning. How could he do that? It happens to be he doesn't because Esav doesn't permit him and so on. But why would it put one to leave? Like, this is the ability to study Torah. And I forget, it's a Chassid Shavor, and I forget who it was. Maybe the cousin of Rabbi, Rabbi Yecheskel Mikazner possibly, who said that, you know what, if you have a bad chavrusa, you have a bad group of people you're sitting with, even if you're learning Torah, it's not the place to be. So there he's sitting with Esav and wants to get out. So I just wanted to say that this is a chabura that we get together week after week, and you know what, you make the commitment, you come. It's a wonderful way. It's a great thing we're doing. We're now into Masechet Chagiga, but I wanted just really to recognize your commitment, and I think the give and take that comes, and to come every week in the evening and so forth. It's dark now, it's winter, etc., etc. But it's a good cadre of relationships and group of friends who come together, Dibur Chaverim, and learning together. Okay.
Absolutely.
So let me just read the Hadran, and then we'll let you guys go get to celebrate the SIYUM in the physical sense. Okay. And I think we have a menu even good. Hadran alach Masechet Moed Kodem, Hadran alach Tayt Bahadra Chalan, Dait Chalan Masechet Moed Kodem, Dait Chalan Los Neshach Nashminan Masechet Moed Kodem, Los Neshachminan Lo Ma'amadim Lo Medam Dasin. Hadra Noch Masechet Moed Kodem, Bahadra Chalan, Dait Chalan Masechet Moed Kodem, Dait Chalan, Los Neshachminan Masechet Moed Kodem, Los Neshachminan Lo Ma'amadim Lo Medam Dasin. Hadra Chalan, Hadra Noch Masechet Moed Kodem, Bahadra Chalan, Dait Noch Masechet Moed Kodem, Dait Chalan, Los Neshachminan Masechet Moed Kodem, Los Neshachminan Lo Ma'amadim Lo Medam Dasin. Yivatzim Afnei V'Lefnecha Adon Hevasenu Shetei Torah Tzchol V'Nosenu B'Mazeh V'Tei Iman Olam Haba Chanina B'Papa B'Rayim B'Papa Nachem B'Papa Achim B'Pata Abba B'Rayim B'Papa Raf B'Papa Rachish B'Papa Surcha B'Papa Achabar B'Papa Dor B'Papa Harav Nod Nolhinu is the way to Raskol Finu Fios Am Chobeisol B'Nei Kolono Anachem V'Tzetzvim Tzetzvim Chobeisol Kolono Yudei Shmer V'Lam Terzasecha Mi'over Tachimeni Mi'ot Mitzvasecha Ki L'Olam Hili Hili B'Tom Mechugecha L'man Lo Evosh L'Olam L'Eshkach B'Gudecha Kivam Chisani Baruch Ato Adonai L'Abdei Nechukecha Amen, 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 Selavad. Moed Menach Menecha Adonai V'Seinu Shisham D'Chalkenu Moshe Beis Hamesh V'Alsam D'Chalkenu Moshe B'Karpanos Shana Mashkim V'Hei Mashkimim Anu Mashkim L'Dever Tov V'Hei Mashkim L'Dvar B'Telem Anu Mamem V'Hei Mamelim Anu Mamem M'Kamischar V'Hei Mamem M'Kamischar Anu Ratzim V'Hei Ratzim Anu Ratzim L'Chem Abba V'Hei Ratzim L'Shachas Shneimar V'Atot Elohim Toridem L'Bar Shachas Anshin Domim Mirma L'Yechetzu Yemei V'Ani Eftach Bach Yiratzim V'Nei Avnecha N'Alhai Kishem Shazatana L'Sayim Masechet Moed Kodem Kein Tazreinu L'Haskell Masechet L'Sfar Macherim L'Sayim L'Lmod L'Amin L'Shma V'Lasel L'Kaim L'Skol Devei Torah Talmud Torah B'Ava Schos Kol Tanoim V'Amoraim V'Tamidei Chachamim Yamod Lanu L'Zarenu Shlo Yom HaShator Mipinu Mipi Zarenu V'Zera Zarenu Ad Olam V'Iskayim Banam B'Hisalechlecha Tan Choscha B'Shachlecha Tishmor Alecha V'Agitzosa Hi Tisichecha Ki Biyu V'Omecha V'Yasiv L'Chosh Noschaim Orech Yom Mimina B'Smol Losh V'Kavad Anei Ozlo Maitena Devrech Sma Shalom. Okay. Which way is east? Probably. Yeah. Amen. Okay. Shkoa. Everybody. Congratulations. Mazel tov.